If you like parties, you like festivals, you like Greek life, you like entertainment, that is what BigXthaPlug specializes in. What is the perfect way to throw the best party? What do you need?
You need great speakers and great sound. You need hype. You need things for girls to take pictures with. You don't sell things, you sell belonging. Knowing that all of your friends are going to have their phones out and you're going to miss it.
What goes into logistics?
There are a lot of problems that arise and you have to just focus on solutions based.
Was it always like sunny skies, rainbows?
Most of my days have been cloudy. Went into my sophomore year of college, partying way too much, experiencing a life that necessarily wasn't me as a person. I blew up to a very large weight, was in a not very good spot mentally, and really honed into the sport of boxing. And I lost 100 pounds within a year, competed in my first amateur fight.
So if you like parties, you like festivals, you like Greek life, you like entertainment, that is what BigXthaPlug specializes in. This is going to be a very, very interesting podcast. I haven't really done something like this before, and I'm kind of fascinated by the aura of what goes into these types of production. Blake runs two companies. We'll get into a little bit: Highland Destinations and Thaw Out Music Festival. So, Blake, before we get into this podcast, something I always am going to starting out with on this podcast, initial question, is what book, movie, or TV character is most like you and why?
Is most like me and why? Wow, that's a good one. Coming off with a hot start. So much of what I draw inspiration from really comes from like a lot of Greek mythology, man. And I look at people like Alexander the Great and, wonderful stories he has through reading some of his books. And you notice just this man who is in crippling fear 24/7, but uses his fear to motivate him throughout his times. And, I think one of those awesome stories is he always used to say how afraid he was of battle. But by using that fear, it made him be the first person to charge out into battle, summoning that strength. And that's really someone I draw a lot of inspiration to as, I go into these events looking at a spreadsheet, not necessarily being in a great spot, but saying we're going to move forward, push in the best possible way, and host just something fantastic and know what's coming you can't control, but your actions are what will dictate the outcomes.
So fear's a big part of what you deal with in this industry then.
Absolutely. I'd say fear is your best friend and your biggest enemy all at the same time, especially with dealing in live events and dealing with people. It's very in your face all the time.
Just like you can't control them and you don't know what repercussions would come from it? Or it's fear that your event's going to flop?
A little bit of both, man. It comes with a fear of not being in control and letting go. And that is something that, you really had to learn from. And, I take a lot of inspiration and draw back a lot of things that I've done from, my own experiences in life. And one of those was, I went into my sophomore year of college. I was partying way too much, experiencing a life that necessarily wasn't me as a person. I blew up to a very large weight, was in a not very good spot mentally and, really honed into the sport of boxing. And, I lost 100 pounds within a year, competed in my first amateur fight, and learned so many great lessons along the way. And one of those lessons was, while I was training, I was always thinking to myself, man, if I'm not in the gym right now, the person that I'm about to fight and risk my life in this match could be out there doing more. And, that's like just a short-sighted view of fear and how you can use things to push you further. But as far as fear with an event flopping, that is always in the picture. Live events, can always fail. I've yet to have one flop yet, but I know throughout my career, I will experience one, two, or maybe even more. And then also the fear of just needing to let go. Super tough to go into the event industry and not encounter fear because you shoot first and you problem solve on the fly. So what I mean by that is you place down these, bids and you get these artists. Well, you know, you put down this money without knowing that it's coming back. And you have to be very okay that once you put that money down, the reality of the situation is you might lose every single cent that has been placed.
Interesting. So the whole thing with the fear and anxiety, I deal with that a lot too, and it really, really, really does stem from one thing, and that one thing is like something that you want to control that you can't control, and
Yeah.
it's the worst feeling in the world. I deal with that with social media. Like I was listening to a podcast with Emma Chamberlain. It was Call Her Daddy. Don't clown me for listening to it. Alex Cooper, a lot of respect for that girl, but she was sitting down with Emma Chamberlain and she was asking Emma Chamberlain, "What's it like, having such a public persona, all this stuff?" And she's like, "My anxiety has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Every single day I wake up or I interact with someone, I feel like I have to be on my best behavior 24/7 because that person can make up whatever rumor they want." And they can go online and say whatever they want about Emma Chamberlain, and she has zero control over it. And so I understand your point. It's definitely a tough thing to deal with 24/7. It's interesting coming from the entertainment industry. But anyway, so for the person who's listening right now and is not familiar with you and your work, what is it that you do?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we do a lot of student travel. So work with a lot of, clubs, fraternities, different organizations, bringing them from point A to point B and handling all the logistics to get them there and back and have a fantastic time. For group travel, that is, primarily what we operate in private events. And then I also have a focus in public events. And those are music festivals, like you had mentioned, Thaw Out Music Festival currently in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Boone, North Carolina, focused around the universities of Tennessee and Appalachian State, primarily going after target demographics that I understand. Being 1-2 years out of school, I'm able to comprehend what these people want, how they want it, and really build a product that I myself, as a consumer shortly before, would have loved nothing more to be a part of. And that's really been my goal: is build consumer facing products that I, Blake Stephano, would have loved to have when I was in school.
So most people when they graduate school, they probably go to a big city. They're working, if you're in business, finance, investment banking, consulting. You got into the event and entertainment industry. What brought you to that industry?
Yeah, a bunch of crazy stuff, man. It's so funny because whenever I talk to different people like yourself, Anthony, I go through this, and my mom's a lawyer, or was a lawyer, and my dad's an accountant. So you look at like two by the book jobs, and then you look at their son who has dove into a crazy, crazy niche. But it really started out with just a love for entertainment and providing people with a fantastic time. And that started, when I was in college. It all started, back in my sophomore year. My fraternity, Delta Tau Delta at the University of Tennessee, we got kicked off campus, for reasons good and bad. But looking at it, we went from, having all this structure, and we had, dues, and we had all this money that would come in, and scheduled events and scheduled plans and structure, and we lost all of it in a second. And we had a lot of people were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to enjoy the last 2 years of college? And not to say that, you need a fraternity or anything of that nature to have fun, but judging from the position we were in, we had this, and then this was being taken away from us. So the goal was, how do I bring this back? So what I had to do was I had to provide structure for, 200 young men in college. And that is always difficult. So reinstating a dues system. I'm not sure if you're familiar with fraternities and the process, but dues are always tough to collect in a regular fraternity as is. Collecting dues without structures or penalties is even tougher. So that brought me to, okay, we have all this money. Now I am, my sophomore year, junior year of college. I have a safe underneath my bed. I have $30,000 in it. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to have fun with this? And it really came to, let's host a good event. We started hosting good events. Bunch of other people on campus really jumped on and started, hosting these events with us. I started hosting events for them as, just offering up my services. And, one thing led to another. Ended my junior year. I hosted my first quote unquote music festival. Shout out Highland Fest. That was, my first real project into this wonderful landscape of entertainment. Hosted 7 acts throughout a whole day. I look at the picture on my wall every single day because it really is my inspiration. But, took a $15,000 event with 7 different acts. Josh Ross, who's now, performing all over the place, great country singer from Canada, came down, performed in the backyard, had a bunch of other great local people. And man, did everyone just have a absolutely fantastic time, which that led me to scale that to a $50,000 event in my senior year, which then led for me to go to upwards of 500,000 the year after graduation. So it was very interesting how we scaled on this trajectory. But at the end of the day, it just comes from a love of just entertaining people and creating great memories.
Interesting. Okay, so I am in a fraternity, and I know way too much about how difficult it is to actually collect dues. Like our our finance guy right now has probably sent out like 700 messages like, like you guys need to pay. They try to put in every incentive like, oh, if you don't pay, you can't come into a party. Nobody listens. It doesn't matter. They never end up getting the money. And so I'm just curious from a guy who's been in Greek life, but also from a business perspective. There are no consequences or penalties if people don't pay you right now after you guys get kicked off campus to run these social events.
Yep.
How did you end up getting them to pay you?
Yeah, no, it's great. Hey, man, it cost me a lot of money out of my pocket as well, because inevitably people didn't pay, but some people were fantastic, and the people who did, I'll remember for the rest of my life for just the the help and the excitement that they really brought to this. But
Yeah.
it all came from a place of providing value. It was like, okay, guys, would you rather sit on your couch or would you rather go to a kick-ass party? And then, after that, it was about finding things that then we could then provide excitement to generate dues. So one of those things were we went on a formal. And on that formal was a travel formal to New Orleans. And that was one of those things that's like, hey guys, if you want to be a part of this, you have to be a member paying dues. And, always trying to use experiences and fun and FOMO to push people to paying money. Because at the end of the day, I say this with tickets and I say this with every live event, you don't sell things, you sell belonging. And if you can sell a belonging and a need for this product, then you will get something fantastic out of it.
Sell a belonging. What does that mean?
Sell belonging means FOMO. It means knowing that all of your friends are going to have their phones out and you're going to miss it. And you're going to be the person sitting on the couch who's scrolling on Snapchat and sees all the wonderful things people are doing.
So how do you create that need though from the start without there actually being an event?
That's a great thing. And I wish I knew exactly what that roadmap was because I would be able to explain it a lot better. But the truth is, it all comes from, an experience. Like with the fraternities, with the fraternity that I was in, I was able to sell the experience that we once had. Well, hey guys, do you want this new experience that's downgraded from the life we used to live? Or do you want to pay a fraction of the cost of what you used to pay and have the same quality weekends, the same quality activities? I mean, we were doing everything that a regular fraternity does, crawfish boils, travel formals, big parties, brotherhood events, really everything of that nature. And for me at the beginning, selling that FOMO was selling the look, guys, do you want the fear of missing out on your college experience? Or do you want to have the experience that you had and you're accustomed to these last 2 years? So in that specific example, that was how I was selling the FOMO. It extrapolating off the previous years of our experience in college at the University of Tennessee.
So is it fair to say like you ran Greek life at Tennessee?
Greek life, yeah, definitely fair to say. I worked with about every single fraternity while I was in school, other than one or two there. And we were hosting events. 3,000 to 4,000 people. There was one event we did. It was one of my first ever live events. It was called the Labor Day Luau, and I always wanted to get creative, right? So I'm like, I went into the University of Tennessee, and our events were just like speakers on sticks, and you press play. That was it.
Yeah.
It was nothing really crazy. A lot of just standard, JBL speakers and stuff of that nature. And what we did, the first thing out, we started out with bang. Grabbed a dunk tank, grabbed a 40-foot slip and slide, foam slide, put it up in the backyard. And I was also blessed. We had a wonderful, wonderful spot to live in my junior and senior year of college. It was 3 back-to-back houses with 10 guys in each house and a 60-yard back lot. So we had even though we lost a fraternity house on campus, we had one off campus. And what that allowed us to do, it allowed us to, play with a little leverage, right? It allowed us to be like, okay, we're going to host a spot in this fantastic lot, which almost is about half the size of a football field. So you can imagine, it's a warm, sunny day, Labor Day, everyone's back to school. You host an event. It is, on one side of the lot, you have a 40-foot tall slip and slide, foam blasters coming down. You have a dunk tank. You got a DJ and, a crazy stage set up in the middle. And then on the right, you got a 30 by 30 foam pit. And,
Right.
just, the excitement that brought, man. I mean, we were sitting there, running clickers, and we clicked in about 3,000 people before we ran out of spots to start clicking people. So that's really when I learned, like, man, I love this. I love everything about this. I love the excitement leading up to it. I love seeing people there and having a great time, and I love seeing everything on social media after. It really just puts a smile on my face.
So you're running Greek life at Tennessee. It's got to
Yeah.
court some attention.
Yeah.
What does your life look like after you get this huge presence and like everybody knows you as a guy that's throwing these events?
You know, it was a very private, and I'm still a very private person. Like, this is the first ever type of live thing that I've ever done, so to say. So I was excited to do this, and I've always kept everything private. I got to meet a lot of really awesome people and have great experiences like that. But it was really like the people who knew and the people who paid me knew, and like those who didn't. And I kind of kept it like that throughout my time at Tennessee. Just because from, business side, that just wasn't my focus. I was so focused on creating great memories and having a great college experience myself and
Yeah.
providing value for myself, that it wasn't necessarily external. But definitely got to meet some really cool people throughout the process nonetheless.
Let's get into the psychology. Okay, so let's go back to Tennessee. Let's just
Yeah.
say you're back at Tennessee and you're about to throw a frat party.
Yeah.
What is the perfect concoction? Sorry, let me re-say that. What is the perfect way to throw the best party? What do you need?
The perfect way to throw the best party in America relies on a couple key things. It all starts with, you need great speakers and great sound. That's number one. You always need something to bring people's attention in and away from what's going on. Number two, and this is most important, is you need hype. You have to be able to bring and build hype in some sort of manner, whether that's through promotional materials, whether through that's word of mouth on campus, that you just have it like that. And everyone knows, like, oh, when you throw this party, it's going to be crazy. But the biggest thing that most people don't know, and this is where I always dominated and I always loved, was you need things for girls to take pictures with. And that was how I built my events. I built my events so that when you go there and you are Sally and Grace walking, into the event, that there's going to be 5 things as you walk in to take pictures in front of. And what that allows you to do You say, oh my God, that's so cute. Let me take a picture. You share it to your Snapchat, you share it to your Instagram story. That breeds 5 people to swipe up, say, where are you? Next thing you know, you look down the street and there's 1,000 girls walking down. And it really happens in that manner. So providing items to take pictures of and share is just absolutely necessary for a great event, especially in today's environment with social media.
Right. So like I'm thinking, I mean, from my perspective, bro,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna go to a party or I'm gonna go to a music festival or I'm gonna do this college travel party to Cabo or Puerto Rico, wherever it is, dude, the number one thing I'm looking for on this website is the marketing with the girls. Like, does it look like there's going to be a lot of girls there? Does it look like it's going to be have a fun time? Because from a guy's standpoint, like that's very appealing and attractive. Like we want to be able to socialize.
Absolutely.
Then you run a successful event without the girl aspect of it. Like, is the girls your number one marketing selling point?
You better be willing to lose a lot of money if you are just trying to host an event for guys. But
Right.
no, I think there are different ways. You just can't host large scale events that are going to draw high tickets. What you can do is you can host niche focused events. Kind of like you see it popped up with run clubs and stuff of that nature, like very niche focused. And not to say that that's for men. That's almost become like the new form of online dating today, and just how these run clubs and how people meet. But I think it is an absolutely necessary proponent. Is obviously the female side. You get it. You're in school. You know, it really just is one of those things that is absolutely necessary for live
Right.
events.
I mean, if you look at any big club, anything like that, I mean, in the hype videos, there are no dudes like drinking beers. Like what those hype videos are aimed at. But I'm trying to understand from like a girls and guys perspective. If you're marketing, where are the priorities within a girl for this event and a guy? So like we talked about guys right now, if you are to create FOMO and hype, they want to see that there are going to be a lot of girls there. From a girl's standpoint, okay, something you can take photos with. What else are you implementing in marketing to appeal to the females to actually show up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of that comes with building, like I said, selling the belonging, selling the experience, not focusing on selling a ticket, selling the belonging and creating the community that is the event. And what happens with that and really comes from, who you bring into the project. So for context, at the University of Tennessee, we do Thaw Out Music Festival there. Something we do or we did to start because you go in there and nobody knows what Thaw Out is. They're like, "What's this weird sounding name? I don't even know what this is. What is it?" Blah blah blah. And you have to create this immense level of trust. So how you do that is you create a need, you create a want. Everyone wants to go to the biggest party. There's nobody who wants to miss the biggest party of the year. So that's number one. You got to talk it up. How is it going to be the biggest party? Then number two, in the biggest party, who attends? What does that look like? For us at the University of Tennessee, it was bringing in, some of the more attractive women, some of the women who had great, social media followers. It was about bringing in all the athletes from the basketball and football team, all, the guys on campus who had the most stature in fraternities, different clubs, and, assimilating everything from sports, Greek life, and then, groups that you wouldn't necessarily think would belong in an event. I mean, I reach out to everyone you can think of, whether that's a chess club or whether it's the language club. I'm going to reach out to you and I'm going to see how I can provide you value. And when you can bring everyone together and you create this melting pot of people,
Yeah.
but you also bring the most reputable people on campus, that's where it really turns into something special.
Okay. And so how do you get these artists for this? Because you mentioned who are the biggest artists that you've had on, like Waka Flocka, Big X the Plug, who else?
Yeah, BigXthaPlug is definitely one of the biggest we're working with right now. Shout out Big X, man, number 5 or number 4 on Billboard and number 1 on Hot Country right now. So never did I ever think that in this short time in my career, that I would be working with an artist of that stature, and, super blessed and grateful to have that opportunity. But, it just comes down to making a good deal, to providing, both parties with value, and, having the right connections to be able to get a hold of these people. Talent buying is a very, very tough thing to do, and it is always changing. So the price that you're going to pay yesterday is not the price you're going to pay today. And the
Right.
price that you paid 3 weeks ago, oh man, is that just nowhere near the stratosphere now. So it really just is surrounding yourself with capable people who have connections, and then going through those connections to get the right deals done.
So is it fair to say, like, in your industry, people, relationships, networking is the number one most important thing?
It's everything, man. I mean,
It
right
is.
now I look at myself. I'm 23 years old. I just left Las Vegas last weekend. I got to go backstage and artist guest list to, Medusa, James Hype, and SideQuest. And, those are great guys. I love them all. But, James Hype is arguably like one of the bigger DJs in the world. And,
Right.
that was done through an email. That really goes to tell you the level that it takes for connections in this industry. It's not
Wow.
something you can just do. It's something you earn.
So okay, so if I'm starting out and I'm you a couple years ago and I want to start getting connected with these big artists, what's the roadmap to do it?
The roadmap to do it is starting small, making sure that you can build good payment history and a good reputation. So, rewind to last year. Uh, it was a great event. We had Waka, Flocka, Snake Hips, Twin Sick, Zandra, another big influencer, and then, another good band, Hippies and Cowboys, out of Nashville, Tennessee. And the leverage that we found with that was all of them had a fantastic time. They had a
Mm.
10 out of 10 time. They had great stories to say about the event when they talked to their agents. And most important thing, we paid. So, at the end of the day, those guys just really want to get paid. And it's about providing them that value, because the second you lose that payment history, it's done.
True. And so about payments and
Yeah.
financing, was it always like sunny skies, rainbows? Did you ever have like a financial scare? Were you ever in debt? How did you raise money? Walk me through some of that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm really, really lucky that I had never had to go to a VC or internal, or external investor. Uh, Most of my days have been cloudy.
Mm.
I'm not in this for short term money. I am in this to learn, to build, and to create awesome products. And that doesn't happen overnight. And if you come at it from a short term financial aspect, you lose sight of the bigger picture, which is creating a long term brand. So,
Mm.
every day I wake up and I look at a red spreadsheet, but it's knowing that one day it's going to turn green. And when it does turn green, the value that will be provided will be enough to take me to a place where, we have a great patch of, VCs wanting to be a part of this, or, guys from private equity companies wanting to buy in. So that's really how I see the path is, not focusing on the short-term financials and focusing on building something just spectacular. Cause I tell you what, if I did this for short-term money, I would have been out a long, long time ago.
Really? Do you think a lot of people in this industry get caught up in that? Like, have you known really?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had conversations with people where, for example, I did a private show last year, had a huge issue. I knew we were going into the event with that was slightly under budgeted. This was a private event, so I had, no control from my end on a financial side. But, I spoke with them saying, yeah, I think we should pay a little bit more money and provide a better speaker package. That led to each speaker blowing one by one. And I had to give a full refund. And I didn't get a refund from the buyer side. The products that I bought, despite the fact that they weren't great and they malfunctioned, I did not get a refund. So I had to pay the client back. And, while I was having that conversation, I was speaking with someone. And while we were talking, they said, like, oh, you you might not need to refund them all. You can just figure out a way to do this. I said, no, it's not about that. It's not about the money. And their response was, well, it is about the money. And I said, that's where you and I differ. The truth is, we want to build something special, something that people can really get behind from a brand side. And that was from a private event side. So this wasn't Thaw Out or anything of that nature. But, most people look at this as, I'm going to host an event, I'm going to make my money, and then I'm going to leave. But that's just not really how this stuff goes.
So, like, part of your brand, honesty, integrity seems to be a big part.
Has to be. At the end of the day, man, once you lose that, you lose everything. And from a credibility standpoint, I'm already so young to be dealing with some of these people. I just can't risk it, especially like, you see great entrepreneurs come up. Billy McFarland, perfect example of that with Firefest. Bill was in the process of building something absolutely spectacular, was not honest with people.
Yeah.
And that will hurt him and, be a stain on him for, the foreseeable future until he goes out and builds another great project. But, until then, unfortunately, that cloud will follow you around. So being, 23, now actually just turned 24, there's already so many doubts. So all I want to do is provide good work to erase those doubts.
Speaking about fire and that festival, I've seen that documentary. I've got to say, like, I know the guy's kind of a con artist and he scammed everything, but his whole idea it's a pretty cool idea. Like, did you take inspiration from that? Was that some of, I don't know, like, were you like, man, this fires me up. I think I want to be that type of guy, except do it the right way.
Exactly. There's so much to that where it wasn't the reason why I wanted to do it, but it was drawing inspiration from how it's done because people don't realize how hard it is to do
Yeah.
what he did. And he might have failed, but truth be told, he launched arguably the first ever true influencer campaign with Gigi Hadid or Bella Hadid and Hailey Bieber and Kendall Jenner. That was one of the first true influencer campaigns to exist in the United States or really any other market that has been. And I drew a lot of inspiration to that as, I dropped my first year festival in Knoxville. Well, something I did was I went to the micro influencers of the University of Tennessee. All the Kendall Jenners of the University of Tennessee, when we launched, they put a post up. Everyone put the exact same post up. So it's building that FOMO and building that excitement of, oh my gosh, so-and-so's going, I see so-and-so's going. How does that all culminate? It culminates to, you don't want to miss the biggest party. So absolutely drew some inspiration to that. His marketing plan was something spectacular. Unfortunately, he just didn't deliver the product he marketed, but failure happens and it exists, but that's why you have to be honest with people so that you don't go to jail when it's all said and done.
I agree, bro. I agree. Okay, so you mentioned one thing there, like logistics, difficulty. People don't understand how difficult of a task he was trying to pull off, and what he did pull off. Obviously, what he didn't pull off, but like, I don't understand it. I don't think the majority of college kids understand what it takes to do what you do and throw a successful festival. What goes into logistics that the average person wouldn't know?
Oh man, it is taking your head and slamming it against the wall a trillion times until you get an answer. But I'll give you a spot on example of how this stuff kind of wraps up. And it would actually happen this year, something I was dealing with for 5 to 6 months out of this calendar year. And so, we have a fantastic event in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was, in my mind, a 10 out of 10, had, 7,000 attendees. Everyone was so happy. Pictures all over the place. Branding existed. Everyone does what we love to say, which is, they thawed out. And because that's what it is. It's celebrating the end of spring and this being outside and getting to spend a full day with all of your friends, with every single person. You look to the left and right of you, it's your friends. And
You're getting me fired up right now.
exactly. Well, that's what it's about. But, so we have this wonderful event. right? And the venue that we had it at didn't want to have us back. They said, hey, look, you guys had way too much foot traffic. We don't believe our grass is going to be able to maintain the level of crowds that you intend to bring. You can't have the event back here. And that took them up until October to say. So we have the event May 3rd or May 4th. We have the event May 4th, 2024. We enter new negotiations, get a deal done. I signed the contract. I send it back to them, and they don't sign it and send it back. I'm like, okay, something's going on. What's up? So we give a couple phone calls. I press emergency. I tell them like, hey, this has to be signed by, X time, or we're just going to proceed like you aren't doing this with us. To which I was hoping I would just get a signed piece of paper and that people were taking some time, but that actually was not the case. They came back and they said, due to the crowds that you're intending to bring, this is just something we cannot have at our venue. And that's where I'm just like, whoa, okay. I have this product that I spent a lot of time, effort, and capital on to build that now has no home. And I am 9 months away from this event. And what am I going to do? So it started with printing out all of Knoxville, Tennessee, and drawing a circle, 20-minute radius. So you can drive by car, 20-minute radius to a new site. That was realistically about 10 to 15 hours of work while running another business, calling these 10 to 15 hours a day, calling just anything that matters. So like you'd see a plot of land and you think it might work, they get a phone call again and again and again and again. Throughout that process, I was probably told no. I'd have to say 1,000 times, probably more. Just calling a business, calling a parking lot, calling a farm, calling anyone you could, calling real estate agents. In that time, I had one deal that I thought was going to go through, went all the way through negotiations with them. They're actually an event venue. Offered them anything you could have thought they could have wanted. They were going to make so much money out of it. I was actually the one who's getting the short end of the stick, but I was willing to do it for the event to exist. Flew down there, got them an agreement ready to go, and same thing. They didn't sign it. So then I entered the same situation that I was in, but with less time. And now I have about a month and a half to find a new venue. And just repeating that process again, but drawing the circle out just a little bit further. Okay, now we're going to go to 25 minutes and just calling again and again and again till somebody finally said, yes, we're happy to host you and, let's have a great event. But that's just like a snippet of, one of the many logistical issues you can run into. And it's just not freaking out, staying true. And, I ended up locking in the venue that we have now. I locked that in 1.5 days before I had to put in all my alcohol permits. So if we did not lock in that venue when we did, event would not have happened. And, it's,
Holy shit.
yeah, no, it was crazy. It was a crazy time. Like tons, you want to talk about like dealing with like anxiety and stuff like that. It's like every single night you go to bed just thinking like, wow, like I work so hard. I spent all this money on a product. Like we have to find an answer. We have to find an answer. And that's really what it's always from. It's just there are a lot of problems that arise and you have to just focus on solutions based rather than letting fear kind of just run your way. Cause, if I spent 2-3 hours less on that project and 2-3 hours more complaining and being upset, I might not have found that location.
So I see why you comped yourself to Alexander the Great. Like I see this fear. I could when you're telling me this story, I can feel it. It's like it's nothing like social media or personal brand. Like if I don't post one day, are there that many people really going to be affected? No. Like it's probably just going to hurt myself. There are thousands of people that are relying on you. There's people that you have to pay that are relying on you. Like that creates so much stress and so much weight on your shoulders every single freaking day, every waking hour. Like truthfully, what keeps bringing you back to this? Like what is it?
That's why, you really have to love and have a passion for this, because if not, you'll quit. And I go back to this, it sounds corny, but it's a Hormozy quote that I always get at. And it's just like, this is going to be the story that I'm one day going to tell. And when I'm going through these tough times, I really just like, it's so easy to sit and sulk and be upset that things aren't going your way. And that's when you just got to realize, like, look, this is a privilege. This is a absolute privilege to feel this way. There are people who will never get to experience this in their lives. And all you have to do is flip the switch to poor me to this is what hard feels like. And this is what you asked for. So I always go back to the point where it's like, I said I was going to give this everything I have. And this is what giving it everything I have feels like. It feels like stress. It feels like putting holes through your desk. It feels like, sitting here having a conversation with someone, and, whether it's my girlfriend, like I'll be sitting there having a conversation and my mind is just here. It's just on all the trillions of problems that I have going on in my life,
Right.
that I'm just trying to solve. But that's what I asked for. And, in
Yeah.
this process, it's just like acknowledging that these are the things we asked for, and we got to stay true.
Interesting. Okay. Respect, bro. A lot of respect. Let's go back into the psychology of festivals.
Yeah.
So we kind of uncovered the perfect formula to throw a party, and we touched on FOMO a little bit. But what is the perfect formula to create FOMO for a festival or a party?
Over a party, a lot of it comes from the same items. It's just bigger, higher budget, and everything has to be cleaner. That's really the best way to say it. It's just everything you do has to be so on point, because it's so easy for the narrative of people in general to just push things different ways. For example, something I was dealing with this year was we had a venue that was within walking distance to all of campus. Now we moved it to 10 minutes from campus. There are a lot of complaints we dealt with in doing that. And everyone's like, oh, well, why could we do this? Because nobody knows what I went through to get this venue. Nobody knows that in actuality that never existed, and none of this stuff ever could have happened, and whatever. It just doesn't matter to them. And I don't expect it to. So it's about really controlling the narrative to a T. And it's very, very easy to lose control. And it's something that, I even deal with now on year 2 at Knoxville, and year, 4 in Boone. But we've been able to really do a great job there. And Appalachian State has a lot of love for Thaw Out as a whole. And same with Knoxville. But it's controlling, public perception, which, man, that's like we talked about earlier, you have no control of, and it's tough.
Right. The public's your boss. Okay, so there's 7 factors of influence that it was written in a certain book. Damn, I don't remember the name of the book, but it's touched in like every single marketing class. The 7 factors are reciprocity, social proof, authority, liking, scarcity, and unity. From your perspective as a promoter, which one of these factors are the most important, and which ones do you always try to hit on and utilize to influence somebody to come?
I think it is all of that.
Hmm.
I think without having every piece of the puzzle that you just mentioned, and I can kind of go through each of them, I think, when you think about it, the less scarce something is, the less value people derive from it, right? And I think it's just touch on each topic that you said, and understanding that each, not having any of them, has scaled consequences. And it really just comes, if you have no authority, people aren't going to want to buy your tickets. They're going to be like, oh, why do I need to do this? I can go do whatever I want. I can go do a beer Olympics with my friends. I can go to the mall with Sophie. I can, go on a run. I can do this. So you have to have a level of authority where it's like, no, this is the biggest fucking party here in this whole city. So you can miss it, or you can be there and experience something amazing. And I think it's really touched on all of that. I'm going to have to take a look at that book, because I have not read that. So
I actually think it's just called Influence. Like, I'm pretty sure the book is just called Influence. So
yeah,
you're saying, though,
items again? What were those 7 items again?
reciprocity. So it's like, I'm gonna do you a favor, and then it's inevitable. It's human nature. If I do you a favor, it's kind of implied, or you feel like you have to do me a favor back. So
For sure.
reciprocity. I feel like this one. Correct me if I'm wrong. this is probably good from a connection networking standpoint, artist, stuff like that.
And reciprocity, it's also with the market itself. It's like, look, guys, we're going to provide you with this crazy amount of value. We're going to give you an experience that does not exist in your market today, and we're going to bring it there. And we're not going to price it to a place that's not out of budget for students. I mean, we
Right.
started this last year. We sold $20 tickets. This year, it's different. We have $57 tickets. But even that, compared to what concerts go for today, and I just saw a USA Today or somebody did a poll. The average 1 day concert, so not even a festival, which we do, which has multiple acts out a day, is retailing and selling for $140 a ticket. And
Yeah.
we come in, you look at what we do, and it's like, this is $57. Anyone can afford it to a degree. Obviously, there are people in the world who can't afford that, at which I would recommend them not to go to the event and go focus on building a skill that's going to make money. But for $57, you get an all day experience, and you get to see the level of talent that we're bringing, and you get to be with all your friends, and you get to have these great things like attraction and all that stuff. To me, I look at it, I'm like, how can you look at Coachella, see people are doing payment plans and installments at 60% of the GA is, not able to pay off their ticket. Yet this is just a $50 bill. Half these kids are spending it one night out on town.
Dude, speaking of Coachella, so my agency, they're based in LA. So one of my managers, he's like, "Yeah, shit, I was at Coachella this weekend." And so I'm asking him like, "Yo, like how was it?" Um I was shocked at how Coachella's actually ran. So I'm not talking about influencers and VIP and stuff like that, but the majority public, what they have to do is they have to camp there. So they have to drive in, they sleep in like a car or something. The only bathrooms that are there are porta potties. There's communal showers for everyone. Bro, that sounds like a horrible experience. Like that does not.
That's a lot. No, that's a lot. That's a lot for sure. We're just, we're your college's biggest party. It's a 1 day music festival.
Yeah.
You get to go 10 minutes down the street to go show up to. Meanwhile, for these other events, you're traveling, hours on end. So really
Yeah.
just a different experience, to say the least.
All right. So we covered
Yeah.
reciprocity, social proof. So what comes to
Spot
mind?
on there, man. So you can't have a good event or festival without social proof. You need figures, and you need people of stature there. Absolutely.
Authority. So you mentioned it a little bit, but like really break down authority and how you try to implement it.
Yet my meaning of authority with this is just my meaning of this is the authority is, this is the biggest party on your campus. Who wants to miss that? Like, actually, who wants to be the person who's sitting on their phone after this event is said and done, and you're looking at the highlight reels of it? No, you want to be there. You want to experience it. That's what life's about. Life's about experiencing wonderful things with your friends, with your family, with the people you love, and building great memories and stories that you can then share with others. And that's really where the authority comes from. It's just like, do you really want to miss that? To me, my answer was always no. But other people, that's for them to make up. So that's why you need, the reciprocity. You need to provide value. That's why you need the social proof. And when you have these things together, they all build a wonderful fire of an event.
What about liking? This may be the most. I don't know. So liking, I'll just explain what it is. It's like
Yeah.
I'd say this is probably the least effective out of all of these different ones. But liking's like I'm gonna buy from people that I like. So how does that?
Perfect example of this. Our events are geared towards the universities themselves. So that's a theme, right? And people like to support what they know and love. For Tennessee, it's all volunteer branded. It's orange branding. It's, go Vols. I mean, because that's what I'm spreading. That's the love that I had for the University of Tennessee. And I just want to show people how great of a school this is and how much better it is than everyone else. Same with App State. That's what I want to do with App State. I want it to be branded all for App State, and I want App State to feel the love and community that is Thaw Out, and really engage with that.
Well said. And then scarcity, I mean, we mentioned that. What about unity? How do you try to implement unity?
Same thing, goes back to that liking point, and it's building that community culture of, you look to the left and right and it's your best friends, and that's really the what we try and build, is this community of your whole college coming out to have just a fantastic day. And you let us worry about all the logistics and how we're going to get things there, and all you got to worry about is you show up, you have your ticket, and you're safe.
Okay, so going off a little bit topic, but I never, ever, ever want to be the first person to show up to a party. Because first of all, I think it hurts your aura a little bit. Like you'd rather be the kid. I'm not gonna show up on time. I'm gonna roll in a little bit late. I'm gonna make sure everybody sees me walk in. So that's part one. Number two is because if I'm the first one at a party, guess what? I'm probably not gonna be socializing with people because there's not a lot of people there. I'm gonna pull out this thing and go like this, which is the biggest party killer ever. Nobody ever wants to be at a party where everybody's just going like this. How do you alleviate that anxiety for the first movers at a party? Get them off their phone and get them interacting with each other.
Great question. And this is something I resonate with tremendously. Just being myself and understanding, my own experiences and stuff that I've gone through in life. I've always taken the lessons that I've learned for myself and applied them into live events. So what I mean by that is, when you go into an event, there's always those memes of, oh, the girls got here, let me look at the weather, right? And what I try and do is I try and take this and turn it into a tool. And what I mean by that is, like I said earlier, you bring things to draw people's attention, and you bring things for girls to come in and take pictures with, that then makes them inclined to share it, not just with their friends short term, but long term, meaning on the internet and, throughout their general network as a human. Um, but it really comes down to taking people out of this and into this. And that's done with great staging and equipment, stuff that's going to draw people's attention. I also think it's important to have clear pathways. And what I mean by that is, I want to take you from point A to point B to point C to point D, and D's got to be your end point. And by the time you've hit point D, you have to be comfortable. What I mean by that, and to extrapolate, is I learned this while I was hosting events in my college. And I always used to call it, herding cattle and herding sheep. It's the same type of category or same type of thing, as you may think. But what it comes to is, you have to bring people's attention to different points. And when you can do that, then you're able to take them out of their head and into what's actually happening. So making them focus on experiences, whether that's a mechanical bull, whether that's, a cool imagery thing that they're taking a picture with, or, things that they're taking a picture with and sharing with their friend. It really is about drawing the mind from being internal to thinking of external things that they're doing. So activities are great. Stuff that draws your eyes in are always great. Obviously, big time artists and stuff like that are going to take your attention from being very internal to looking external.
Interesting. Interesting. So, gotcha. And those types of things just help people what? Like just loosen up? Is that the whole purpose? Like let's just say a foam pit or stuff like that. Is the
Yeah.
purpose just to loosen up so they're willing to go engage with someone else? Or is it just to get off the phone and just get the eyes up?
It's a little bit of both. What comes with, I always like to say this best. Whenever you're feeling super anxious,
Yeah.
quit judging yourself and look at one person and judge them intently. And within 5 minutes, you're no longer anxious because you're looking at what this person's doing. So what this allows you to do is it just shifts your mental framing from, I'm at this event, I wonder how I look, I wonder how I'm acting, to, oh, look at this person, look at that person,
Yeah.
and really take you off the internal and pushing you out towards the external. And I learned this, funny enough, because in my houses where we used to do the entryway, it was a narrow pathway that you would walk through, and then it would open up into the back lot. So I didn't realize this then, but it was almost like, herding cattle and herding anything. You bring them in a small pathway and you bring all these people and corralling them into this small area. And I just would watch people. Oh, I built our gazebo. We had a gazebo. I turned that into, a full tiki hut where I got bamboo and built it all into a tiki hut. I'm like, oh, wow, that instead of people going on their phones, they went right away to this spot. Now they're
Wow.
taking a ton of pictures with it. After they did this, they then went to the second point of the event and they went and took pictures in the foam pit. And then they enjoyed the foam pit and that experience. After they did that, they went to the dunk tank. They got to throw a ball at their friend. After they did that, they ran down the slide. And oh my gosh, by that point, now you're like, oh, I'm here to have a great time. Let me go to the stage and let me go engage with it because I'm not focused on how do I feel? How do I look? What do others think about me? It's wow, I'm having a great experience and I'm here mentally. I'm not in here.
That's fascinating. I've got some podcasts and books that I need to share with you after. I have a love for human psychology. I have a love for human nature. What really we are so weird as humans. Like we have so many ways that we can just our actions. Like what causes us to do these certain things? I have a passion for this. It relates directly to your line of work. I'll send you that stuff after. That's
Absolutely.
very very fascinating, and that's just like it's a good thing. So when I get my own home and I start hosting people, I'm gonna put up a fucking foam pit, or I'm gonna do something
Draw
that's gonna.
some attention, man, some way or another. It was funny because I learned this stuff unintentionally. I learned this by just wanting to host a crazy event and being like, I just want to put dope stuff here so people can have fun. And then I saw what happened when we started putting these things in place. I'm like, oh, wow, I just watched this person go to this, and this spot. And now they're at the stage and they're totally engaged. And we were able to keep building off that and keep using all these things. The next thing you know, we're at an event and you have 7,000 people swag surfing, locked arm in arm with each other, going back and forth because they're
Great.
not focused on how do I look. It's let's have a tremendous experience
Wow.
and have a great time with all my friends.
Dude, that is some interesting stuff. That is some really, really interesting stuff. All right. You have another business that we haven't really touched base on, right? This is Highland Destinations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the premise of it is you're kind of setting up a way for a fraternity or groups of college kids to pay you, and then you take care of everything for a formal or a vacation for them. Is that correct?
Spot on.
Okay. So, uh, this type of industry right here, like, are college kids being taken advantage of from other companies with this?
I would definitely say it's a little bit of the wild, wild west, and transparency is maybe not the clearest item. And that's something that I'm trying to change and it's part of the reason why I came into this industry because I didn't believe there was proper service and pricing. And literally my if then statement that I wrote in my classroom was if I provide a proper service and proper pricing, then we will expand quickly throughout the college market. And it happened. And then it was literally off that if then statement, knowing that I'm building something for me, who was the buyer, who ran the fraternity, who knows how frustrating it is to get dues and do these trips and get these people on there, and just building my processes and processes from those experiences.
So, like, what is it? Like, do you have examples when you say transparency and pricing? Can you break that down?
Yeah, margins right off the bat. I think you know there's a great line from Margin Call. It's like be first, be smarter, or have more money, and or whatever it is. It's something along those lines. Or no, but be first, be cheaper, have more money. And one of those things we're coming at is we're just the cheaper provider for the exact same product. And you can go to me or you can go to another person. You're going to get the same level of service and you're going to get the same product. One is priced to where I believe, as a buyer a year ago, and also providing the service, or 2 years ago, whatever that was, I believe that that's fair. And typically we come, well under the competition's rates, and, people seem to understand that. A perfect example of lack of transparency would be, we are competing on an account. I'm not obviously going to say what this company is or who they were. But we're competing on an account. We're offering the same product. Obviously, we come in substantially cheaper. One of the quote unquote selling points that they had was, this is blank company complimentary parking. Well, the complimentary parking was done by the hotel. It was not comped by the company. It had nothing to do with the company. And it's just acknowledging that once you've crossed that line into the lack of transparency, that bleeds into anything else. And I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
Once you cross that, it's been crossed and there's no going back from that. And it will bleed into other things you do.
That's a fair point. Damn. Yeah, it's all. I mean, like, some people would look at that and say, "Oh, it's like so, it's such a little thing. Like, does it really matter?" But your big thing is, like, if you're gonna lie once, you're a liar. You're gonna lie with every other opportunity that you can have.
And it might not be in every other opportunity, but in my opinion, it's once you've crossed that gray line, you've crossed it. And it just makes crossing it again easier and easier and easier. And, it goes back to the quote of, you are who you are when no one's watching. And like,
True.
who are you when adversity is at your back, when everything's gone wrong? Are you going to be the guy who does the right thing? Or are you going to be the guy who goes to his short-term pleasures? Are you going to be the guy who focuses on, himself and not the team or your customer or the product? And I think once you just grade that line, or you've gone over it, it's very hard to come back, stay center, and focus on what's right and ethical.
I agree. It's like a cheat day with food. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but you know what? I could just have one Oreo today. And then guess what? One Oreo turns into two. The next day you start pounding down three, and it just spirals from there. So
Absolutely,
it's a fair
man.
point.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely. It's just it's any discipline, like any type of discipline in that nature. It's just like, it is okay to have a cheat meal and it's okay to do stuff like that. But it's just like, if you have the cheat meal and then you lie to your trainer about having the cheat meal, it's like, yeah, like, it's honesty, man. It's
Yeah.
honesty first. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
All right. So the last thing I want to touch base on is like, with these college travel companies, we see what happened with the kid informal in Nashville.
Mm.
Like, he goes and he passed away.
Yeah.
There's a girl, I know this isn't exactly what you do, but it's the girl in Dominican Republic. I think it was Punta Cana over spring break. She goes there on a college trip paid for with an organization. She ends up drowned. I don't even think they know what happened to her. She was either trafficked or she drowned. Like, something super, super severe and absolutely horrifying. Uh, but something that you do with the college destination and these festivals is you have to understand, like, the consequences of what may happen to kids. And I'm sure that's terrifying. Do you have systems put in place in case something like that would happen? Or how do you manage that fear?
Yeah. Well, I'll break it down from the festival side first, and then, kind of go from the travel. With the festivals, it's really just having a good understanding of a dot map, a security dot map, placing security guards in the right positions, ensuring that you have the right teams in place to support safety, proper evacuation plans, emergency response plans, all of that good jazz. For example, we had a big parking garage next to where we hosted our festival last year. And in today's world, I'm looking at that parking garage as, oh my gosh, if a shooter goes up there, this is a really bad spot. Like, we
Yeah.
could be, my kids could be in incredible danger. So how are we going to fix that? Have security on each floor, mitigate risk at all levels, whether that's wanding, making sure guns or anything of that nature isn't brought into an event. And then also like having the right people in your corner.
Mm.
Our ops team is from Coachella and Stagecoach. They're there right now hosting the event and working on the build, and just relying on them. Like, okay, this is what I think. Here's where I think the risk points are. Here's where I think things could go wrong. Turning that over to them, having them review it, then give me their feedback of, hey, Blake, I think, you're on the right spot here. But I think if we, we can alleviate some of your concerns by putting a certain amount of security guards at this entry or doing X, Y, and Z things. For the travel, a lot of it comes down to location, location, location. Kids got to be in a great spot. They got to be within walkable distance to anything they're doing. We try and mitigate risk by placing wristbands on our travelers so that our vendors and partners know who our kids are. So if somebody is very inebriated or needs to go home, they're very easy to be identified. And that's another tough part of this is obviously human nature takes over. Obviously you and I, at one point in time in our lives have had one or too many drinks, and it's really important to have, great friends and the right people around you who care about you. That being said, we also go to a lot of the trips, if not all of them. And we have staff members on site for that,
Mm.
just in case, Lord forbid, someone needs to be picked up or we need to go run out of our hotel room to go make sure somebody's brought home and is taken care of. That is something we'll do. It's not necessarily our service, but from a person to person standpoint, the last thing I ever want to do, I have not had this conversation yet, but the last thing I ever want to do is speak to a parent of someone who just had an issue. That would be something that would literally devastate me. It would really be devastating. So my thought process is like, understand the risks that come in place with humans, build systems to erase the risk, and continue to just understand that human nature takes over, and you just got to have systems in place so that your kids are ready to go, whether that's hiring security at the hotel to ensure that when they're walking through, they're making, hey, you're here, all right, come on, let's get to the room, simple stuff like that. Security at venues and hotels, and then simple stuff like making sure people are wristbanded, and you really just got to do your best. That's why we go to our trips. That's why we do our best to ensure that our kids are taken care of. Obviously there's only so much we can control, but the more the better.
Mm. I think you can tell when like someone's going to be successful in what they're doing or not, because you can really tell where their head's at, where their heart is, and if they're in it for a greater purpose for themselves. And like, I've got to commend you for it, bro. We've been speaking for an hour and 5 minutes, and you can tell the values of your brand. Two of them right here: honesty, integrity. Huge. You can tell just speaking about if someone is too intoxicated or whatever it is, all the systems you put in place, that you're genuinely there to make sure people have a good experience, have a safe experience. Like, that is your priority. It's not for the money. It's not for the status. It's not for the clout. None of that shit, which I've got a lot of respect for, Blake. So I've had a very good time on this conversation.
I appreciate that. And it's like, yeah, no, absolutely. It's exactly that. A couple final examples. We had a group that was headed down to Charleston, had a great venue downtown, 10 out of 10. We had paid the deposits, all this wonderful stuff, and they go under. Business goes totally under. Obviously I can't recoup that money because the business is bankrupt. And you're on King Street. So there's only a certain selection of venues. And that happened within a week prior to the trip. Rather than making a group spend more money than the already large sum of money they've paid, we took the L on eating the deposit costs and focused on getting buses there so that they didn't have to drive, Uber, anything of that nature. They had buses come pick them up at their hotel, took them to a new venue and back home. And that's kind of what you say is like making sure people are safe and providing the proper systems. It's really just setting people up for success. We could have just booked them another venue and said, hey, look, this is what your contract says. It says businesses go under and, this stuff happens, but that's never the route we go. We're service first. It's white glove. It's okay. venues, to buy a venue this late in Charleston doesn't exist. You cannot get one. Weddings, business events, anything of that nature, they booked everything out. So, we're not just going to put you in something 10 minutes down the road, because now drunk driving, all these ugly things come into play. It's erase that. We're going to buy the buses for your group. They're going to show up at your hotel. We'll have our point man make sure that they're directing you guys to the buses so everyone gets on the right spot. You're going to get on the buses, go to your event, get the buses back to the hotel, and ensure safety is met. And just like doing that, it's another example. I would rather lose the money and maintain a great relationship with a client, or make sure that they are safe coming home, which is, at the end of the day, all that really matters. Because money comes and goes. People are forever until they're not, and the last thing you ever want to do is ruin a relationship for any short-term gain. That just really is never something you can look to do, unless you don't want to be in the game for long, then at which case people come in and they come and go really fast, because people they make mistakes.
Well said, dude. Where can people find you?
You can find me on my Instagram at Blake_Stephano. You can find me, you can reach out to me via DMs. I'm always talking to, great young kids who want to get into media. They want to get into event hosting. They want to get into anything of that nature. You can find me on my business's Instagram, Highland Destinations, or you can find me at thawout.vols or thawout.app man. That's really where I do most of my stuff. And I'm always willing to talk to people and share my experiences, because when I came into this, I didn't necessarily get that right off the rip. I had a lot of people be very standoffish and want to push me away from what I was doing, rather than come in with open arms and just be like, hey, these are my experiences. Take them, learn from them, build the relative context that you need to make the right decision for yourself, and then go out and do it, man. That's really it.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed. Blake, thank you so much for coming on. Love getting into some psychology. Loved hearing about your businesses, your story. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, brother.
It was a pleasure, Anthony. Thanks again. I'll definitely remember the first podcast for sure. This was a great experience, and I'm super grateful, man.
Awesome.
Keep up
Take care, everybody.
Awesome.